Last week I was in Pittsburgh, so David and I could not link up to do the post-game rant. So this is the first official post-game rant of the 2023-2024 NFL season. 49ers just beat the Rams, or it's finishing up. We're around the 2-minute warning. There's so much to talk about in this game. A surprising game, I think, for many, many people. We're going to talk about it all next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And as I said, this is the first official post-game rant of the season. And that means I've got my guy, David, with me. What's up, David? How you doing?
Oh, man, it's so good to be back. I missed you last week, but I was so glad you got that moment in person to get that stomp down in Pittsburgh at what, Acrisure? Is that what they call it? Acrisure Stadium now? I don't even know what they call it.
Yeah, I can't even. It's no.
Yeah, no, it was. So, yeah, it's great to be back. And honestly, we got a lot to talk about today. But, hey, as it's winding down under 30 to 29ers right now, it's probably where it's going to end. So,
well, I mean, it's surprising, right? You and I were texting really all game, which is what we always do. But I'll just say it. The game was rocky. It was a rocky game for sure. Not one that we expected. In fact, I threw out a tweet around halftime that said something like, the first week of the season, the 49ers were in mid-season form. The second week of the season, the 49ers are in week 1 form. And that's exactly what it felt like. You know, there's a lot that can go into it. It's a division game, travel, what have you. Maybe it was all catching up, but not the game that I expected. I predicted a 31-13 win by the 49ers. Now, the spread ended up being, much larger at the end, but really that was a very tight game. Not at all what I expected. The 49ers are supremely talented compared to the Rams. I mean, what did you see? Why do you think the game was much tighter, especially than week 1, right? A road game, East Coast, early game. It just had all the makings to be close, and it wasn't. And this game had all the makings for a blowout, and it wasn't.
I think that clearly at the beginning of the game, the defense was a combination of defenses predicated on getting pressure with 4. It wasn't happening. But also, Stafford, people were saying, well, maybe that's because the secondary was playing so far off the line of scrimmage and allowing Stafford to eat up that short game before pressure got there. It was a little bit of that, but really, it was a combo of playing soft off the line, but there still wasn't pressure. And so it really was uncharacteristic of the 49ers defense. And then, close when you miss 2 absolute gimme touchdowns, and those weren't the only plays. There were other plays that were with ball placement on, this offense is built on yak, right? If you don't have ball placement across the middle of the field, and people kind of rag on Jimmy Garoppolo, I've done my fair share of that in my career, but there were a lot of plays like that today that were just a tick off, but then the deep balls were way off. And so that's the difference between a game that's 30-20 and 44-20, right? I mean, it just is. So, but credit to the defense for coming back. I thought Brock, by and large, he doesn't get flustered, but it doesn't take away from the fact they left a lot of points on the field.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about Brock Purdy because there was definitely some misses for sure. But overall, I mean, even the defense, again, to me, what happened was eventually talent won out. Mm-hmm. Mistakes happen. The Rams have a young team, but for a game to be that close, like I said, it was surprising. Now, I will say this. The 49ers won a game where they played anything but their best football. And sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And I think in some of those instances, it definitely was the case. The Oliver interception, which really kind of started things going downhill for the Rams, was absolutely on the running back. I think it was Kyron Williams that the ball tipped up in the air on him. And then, they ended up scoring and what have you. But the game as a whole, just it was not at all what I expected. And that's okay. The 49ers won in a rough game, and I'll take it. Like, that's where we're at. I'll take it.
Right. And I think, though, that you said this last week, that there's overreactions week 1. I was probably guilty to a degree of that. I do think that this team, though, I legitimately think that this team is one of the very small handful of teams that is a legitimate contender for a Super Bowl. I still think that. That I also believe that although the defense did respond well-ish late in the game, they also got, interception gifted by a tip ball. Those, hey, you're in the right place at the right time. I still think this offense is what the part of the team that's capable of really carrying this team. And that's why it's disappointing when you see the big plays. And the thing is, it's big plays that weren't pressure in faces, right? It's big plays with a clean pocket. It's big plays with plenty of time to throw. Those things against better teams, and make no mistake, guys, the Rams are not that good of a team. Okay. Those are things that you hope you tighten up, but it's the second week. It's good to get that. Hopefully get about that system now, but you got a short week to play the Giants, who I guess are still, I haven't been paying attention, but in contention against the Cardinals and struggling in Arizona right now.
Yeah. Mr. Bacon, Egg, and Cheese Croissant says in all capital letters, stop hating on Brock. No one is perfect. Listen, if you can't even have a conversation that says, hey, he didn't play his best game today, let's talk about it, then you probably don't want to be around 49er fans ever. Like, nobody's taken a shot at Brock Purdy at all. In fact, he played fine, but he wasn't perfect. There was some things that showed up, and we're going to talk about it. So maybe don't be here.
Can I speak to that just real briefly, though, Jesse?
Yeah.
Like, me. Like, Jesse is talking about
you're an Iowa State fan. You're a Brock Purdy stan. Like, what the hell, man?
I'm not a Brock Purdy fan. But
you've loved him. You've loved him for years in college.
Yes.
So
I'm not a stan for any player. Like, that's the thing. I do, though, like in our conversations, like I've given Brock Purdy a lot more grace than a lot of other people. I actually do believe in not just the intangibles, but things
I want to say this. Go find where I bagged on him last week. Go find when have I bagged on Brock Purdy over the last couple weeks even? Like ever since Trey's been traded, it's like the conversation's over. Brock Purdy's the quarterback. Nobody's bagging on him. I haven't even really said anything about Brock Purdy yet, and you're already saying I'm bagging on him. Like, bro, it's okay. He's the quarterback of the team. Nobody is perfect, but if we can't even talk about it when it's not perfect or things that need to be cleaned up with him or anybody else on this team, there's no point in even talking sports. You're trying to take the whole point of talking sports out. Like, why even have the conversation?
And this is the thing that boggles my mind. I sent a tweet out that said, if this game remains
never
close,
said he was dink and dunk, but go ahead.
I didn't either. If this game remains close, and if the 49ers were to lose a close game, I said, if the 49ers were to lose a close game, it would be those missed touchdowns that would, and people are like, how could you say that? I'm like, because of math, points, touchdowns equal points.
All right.
I don't see, and that's not like seeing God. I never said Brock Purdy's a horrible quarterback. I think that we need the reason it's important to talk about, though, like you said, Jesse, is that this team is a Super Bowl contender. This team is not the Arizona Cardinals. This team is not the Minnesota Vikings. This team is not the the Los Angeles Chargers. You should, and that's not even being nitpicky. Like, that's a legitimate concern. We got to hit those plays. And why? Because we haven't hit those plays with Jimmy Garoppolo. And so when the PTSD sets in, especially the play on Debo, very similar to Emmanuel Sanders. Like, we need to hit those plays because we're going to have games where you have to hit them.
100%. And I gave him his flowers after week one. All week I gave him his flowers. So it's 100%. Like, if you don't get mad if I give him his flowers all week long. I didn't see you anywhere in the chat being like, you're giving him too many flowers. And then I haven't even really said much about Brock Purdy yet. I haven't even gotten to the topic yet. And you're just like, so out of control, pissed with your capital letters. Like, bro, chill. Take a chill pill, man. Gammon says, my name is Gammon Brown, and I've hit a milestone. Yeah, you have 4 months. I appreciate you, Gammon. Appreciate you. Cryptic says, sloppy game. I'm still trying to figure out if the D is top 5 or top 10. Purdy missed throws, dumb penalties. Side note, Moody worth that third round pick now? Way too early to say that, brother. I don't know that any kicker is worth a third round pick. So, I mean, he has to live up to really crazy expectations. But if he kicks like this, I'm not going to be mad that they took him, but he has to continue to kick like this. I will say, Gave him his flowers last week. I'll do it again this week. He's been absolutely phenomenal. In fact, that 57-yarder was, I mean, at that time in the game was very, very crucial. Very crucial.
That was clutch because it was also right after the missed touchdown pass to Deebo Samuel, and you take the wind out of your sails. If you miss that 57-yard field goal, see, this is and I agree. I still don't believe in taking a kicker third round. I texted you and Marco. I said, that field goal was clutch as hell. And so they missed that. All of a sudden, the Rams have the ball in the 47-yard, and this is a tie game. And that was a pivotal moment, I have to say. I'm getting to Jake Moody his flowers, absolutely. Except he kicked the ball out, kickoff out of bounds and give the Rams the ball at the 40-yard line. But we won't talk about that.
All right. Cryptic says, give the NFC West credit. They are scoring points. That is for sure. No doubt about it. Flav says, travel after emotional week 1. Thought it would be close when the schedule came out. Just had to get the win today and go home. Solid win. I agree. And yes, I couldn't agree more with that comment. And Flav, I know you've got another comment, but I'm actually going to save it for the Brock Purdy conversation. I do want to talk about this. And, sometimes you've got to see this happen on the all 22 to really decide. But how do you feel about the right side of the O-line today? Because last week they were definitely getting cooked as far as what we saw, all 22 breakdowns. Even during the game, it was pretty clear that they were getting beat an awful lot. Now, the Rams defensive line is not what the Steelers defensive line is by any means, but they do have Aaron Donald, who lined up on the right side a majority of that game. And I felt like it held up pretty good overall, even when heavy blitzes were coming. How do you feel about the right side of the O-line immediately after the game? Not that you can't change your mind throughout the week, but immediately after the game, how do you feel about it?
Right. We'd have to go back to all 22, but I actually felt like Brock wasn't under pressure very much. I actually was more concerned. I mean, it's a different conversation. I was more concerned about the right side of the 49ers defensive line today getting devoured. But the offensive line, I never felt that was a problem. There was one point where I think Brock, I don't know if I would say Brock took a sack. I think it was a combination of just nothing there. He tried to make something. He might have got a half a yard. Those things happen. I don't think the offensive line was an issue at all today at first glance. And that's actually really encouraging. And so, but that's what makes I know we're going to get there, but that's what makes missing wide open receivers more of the issue, when it wasn't because you had happy feet or that you had pressure in your face or it was a collapsing pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. And I want to see it. I don't know for sure, but just at first glance, I don't remember thinking at any point in that game, like, oh, dude, the right side of the line is just awful today. And I think a lot of people had that thought throughout the game last week, including myself. I was at the game, so I saw it. But, overall, I think today, at first glance, it feels like the right side held up. Now, again, not the best defensive line. We'll see how that plays out. But overall, I feel much better today than I did last week about the right side.
Yeah, and I think that's encouraging. And, as for, this game's still going on, by the way. We got 38 seconds and the Rams are running down the field here. Nice. But, yeah, no, I think that's encouraging. And I think that you told me this all week. It's early in the year. Yeah. And the bottom line is to pull out a 10-point victory, to see improvement on that right side, at least in the interim right now, is a positive development.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Saquon Barkley hurt himself pretty bad, it sounds like. The 49ers are about to play them. That's noteworthy for sure. I don't know if it's how serious it is, but it doesn't look good or doesn't sound good. And yes, the Niners did end up covering the spread. So there you go for you.
That's what's most important, baby.
You better.
That's real money. That's real money in my pocket. I had them on a single and I put them in a parlay with the Giants. What's the score of that game?
They won 31-28. Giants did. Yeah, didn't cover. Not so much.
Oh, the parlay.
So much. Not so much. All right, let's talk about this here, and I'll bring up Flav's comment actually, because I think it transitions very well into this. Flav says Brock was fine, missed a couple deep balls, happens, took care of the football, and won with Ayuk being a decoy. Hopefully he's okay. That's the only concern. Yeah, I mean, a couple deep ball misses, and then really the most uncharacteristic miss to me from him was on that third down to Debo on the slant. That's the one that I was like, that that's not Brock Purdy. He doesn't normally miss that. And so I'm not going into panic mode over Brock Purdy. And I've been very clear all off season, regardless of some of the emotion coming from people, that even if Brock Purdy had himself an awful game this year or multiple awful games, I'm a 3-year quarterback guy. So I'm not going to get too high or too low. What you're not going to see from me this year is when Brock Purdy plays bad, I'm not going to be the guy that's like, I told you so, he sucks. Not going to happen. It's just not going to happen this year. I got to see multiple years before I make a full decision on who he is or who he is not.
Absolutely. And I think that's and Flav, honestly, I probably go back and forth before, but what you did say, what you're saying there, I'm not saying is there's nothing wrong with that. Missed a couple of deep balls, though we're not talking about 60 yards on a rope. We're talking about just a standard. I mean, 40 quarterbacks do have to throw the ball down the field on occasion. These weren't like Hail Mary, like I'm putting all of every ounce of my being into these throws. These are throws that NFL starting quarterbacks absolutely have to make. And we're talking about throws where the receivers had a minimum of 3 yards of separation. They just, and so I'm not saying he can't do it either. And like Jesse said, I'm not here to victory lap anything. I wish it weren't true in that case. I do think Brock can make those throws.
He's made them.
He's
made those throws.
And merely though mentioning that you got to hit those and we got to get those like tightened up. That's all people are saying. And it's not the sky is not falling for this team. I look at this team like they finished strong. They are united. They have a great roster. It's great, but yeah, it's not the end of the world. But it could have been for this game, not for the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like, the defense had a lot of, I mean, the defense was let's be real. The defense was getting carved up for a big chunk of that game. They had a ball that went their way where it bounced off the running back's hands. Oliver gets the interception and the whole game really seemingly changed right there. So the defense, I mean, I'm going to hold the defense accountable too. I mean, they were getting carved up. They just were. Now, of course, towards the end of the game, they stepped it up. They played much better. Kudos to them. But that game shouldn't have gotten to that point. And it kind of goes back to a couple things that I've been talking about. Number one is this team might be carried more by the offense than it has in years past. We'll see. But early on, I think that that's still a possibility. And I would say number two, there's a lot of money that is sitting there for the 49ers to spend still on lopsided trades, what have you. They get all their picks back this upcoming draft. Do they make a move at the trade deadline? And what is that move for? Is it for a defensive back? At this point, I think that seems that or the right side of the offensive line seem to be the biggest weaknesses, but it's really, really hard to trade for a good offensive lineman midseason. Corners, you can usually potentially make that kind of trade.
I think after today, Jesse, and look, Nick Bosa is going to get there. But let's be real. And all of a sudden, if you guys like constantly, people look at PFF grading system for, hold on one second. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. But yeah, you're, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Well, the PFF grading system was, Nick Bosa was great. He was double team, triple. Like, okay, I get that. He was virtually non-existent today, and he wasn't getting double and triple teamed all game. And I know it's because he hasn't had a lot of live reps in practice. And so that will come. I still see edge as a need. I still see Drake Jackson being a great athlete, but getting overwhelmed in certain situations by physicality and strength, and sometimes even by players that are not as strong as he is. And it's like, so to me, I keep saying this, forget about Brian Burns. There's a team in Minnesota that's looking at Caleb Williams or looking at one of these guys going down the pike. I really think Danielle Hunter would be an absolutely phenomenal ad. I think it is a need. I think the Niners do need help opposite Bosa. I know Drake Jackson had 3 sacks. 2 of them were cleanups last week. Doesn't diminish him at all. Did the 49ers only win by 7?
They didn't even cover his
Sean McVay just decided to screw Vegas.
The worst beat ever.
Wow. Yeah. So anyway, I think edge is. I still think that you can't have too many edge rushers, and I think that Danielle Hunter is all due respect to Drake Jackson, is a huge upgrade.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that doesn't mean that Jackson can't be a very good player or won't develop this year. But at this moment in time, Neil Hunter is a premier pass rusher. Like that's just what it is. So you're saying, let me make sure I'm hearing you right, because I started out talking about the secondary possibly being the issue. You think it's more that they can't get home with 4, where in the past they've been able to. And so if they can get home with 4, you added to Neil Hunter or somebody like that, that it could rectify the back end. Is that kind of where you're going?
Yeah, and here's the thing. I think what Steve Wilkes said today is he said, hey, here's Puka Nakua, here's Tutu Atwell, here's Van Jefferson, here's Kyron Williams, here's Tyler Higbee. I'm not scared of those guys. We're going to play off the line of scrimmage. We're going to run. And it was a perfect storm of the 49ers' own doing, like falling on their own self-inflicted. Like that wasn't the right angle. Like they were not getting right. They were not jamming them at the line of scrimmage. They said, we're not going to let you be. I don't know why they were that worried about that. But yeah, like the 49ers weren't getting pressure. It wasn't like Stafford was just, quick hits and, the pressure was coming, but it was just coming a half second later. It wasn't. And so that's, if the Niners can't get pressure with 4, it's a problem, because then they send Fred Warner. And there was a play when the game was tight near the end of the game where Steve Wilkes blitzes Fred Warner up the middle, gets blocked, and middle of the field on 4th down, and and they convert. I feel like you can't take Fred out of what he does best, and that's as a coverage linebacker and a guy that zones the middle. And so if you can't get pressure with 4, this defense will struggle. And I don't know if that's really the secondary's fault all the time. I just think, our philosophy really is, like, I think the Niners' philosophy in a lot of ways is that while cornerbacks are elite premium positions, defense is one of the trenches. And if you can't get it up front, you can only cover for so long. DBs have the hardest job. Cornerbacks have the hardest job in the NFL. They're at a disadvantage.
Yeah, absolutely. They they definitely are. It's very hard to cover for 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds at a time. And the 49ers defensive line was not getting home, which is a little surprising because the Rams offensive line is not great. And they lost a player in that game. What was it? Second quarter? I think they lost Noteboom. So, the offensive line already isn't fantastic. Then they lose a starter, and it was still a bit of a struggle to get home with any sort of consistency. So it's something to keep an eye on. Again, this game to me, and Flav talked about it, and I couldn't agree more, really is kind of a week 1 game from the standpoint that with all the travel, you add in a division game, all those things, it makes sense that maybe things were a little sluggish. We'll see what it looks like on Thursday. Although, again, a short week, that can be tough as well. But it is the home opener. I think the 49ers fans will give them juice. We'll see how it goes.
And one thing I want to give credit to the Rams is that their offensive line, Joe Noteboom went out near the end, and the 49ers started getting pressure then. I have to credit the Rams offensive line too. I think they did a very good job in Seattle, which I think everybody blames Seattle. But, and Matt Stafford looked healthy. And aside from a tipped interception and a bad play late when he was just trying to be aggressive to come back from 10, for a team that I thought that might tank a little bit, all is not lost for them.
No, in fact, I was saying, so I did the behind enemy lines. Actually, we'll save it. We'll save it for the NFC West thoughts, because that's what we're going to wrap up with. And it's important to talk about the division as a whole. So I'll save it for then. But let's talk about who shined for the San Francisco 49ers, because although the game didn't go as planned, it definitely had some rocky moments, no doubt about it. Overall, the 49ers did win the game, and players did shine. So give me a player or two that you believe shined in this game.
I would say, today I felt like it was a team game. CMC to me it seems like a cop out here. I cringe to think what would happen to this team. And I know that's, oh God, Dave's a hater. Honestly, man, like without CMC, without that trade is looking at one of the best trades in 49ers history for sure, but NFL history. CMC shined today. I thought Debo got back to being, they started integrating him in plays where Debo pulled some, magic out of his hat with the little dump off bubble to Debo in the inside the 10. And you wouldn't think making a 10-yard touchdown run is a highlight reel, but for Debo, that's just what he does. So it was nice to see those guys out. It was nice to see BA, setting the tone. I also felt like Juwan Jennings was getting more separation than he usually does, which is encouraging. Defensively, right side of the offensive line, at least first glance.
Right.
And then defensively, I say Javon Hargrave was, I felt, getting penetration, but I won't talk about the negative because we're just talking about Flash. So I'll let you go.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. We have to give some credit to Isaiah Oliver. Now, I know that it wasn't fantastic from the secondary at times, but and the interception he had was definitely Mr. Johnny on the spot, but you still have to be there. You still have to make the play. And that's a lot of times corners will drop those types of interceptions, especially at that time in the game. I think that was big, but really there was a third down play a little bit earlier in that game where the Rams, I think it was around the 10-minute mark. It was like 10:18 was left in the game. It was Oliver one-on-one with the wide receiver out in the flat. If he makes Oliver miss, he gets the first down, and it's right there. And Oliver stuffs him cold right there, pushes him out of bounds. I think that play was just as big as anything else in that game because at that time, the score was very, very tight. The Rams offense was still cooking. And if they had picked up that third down right there, I don't know how that game would have gone. I really don't. So that's one of those plays that when you look back on, like I said, I want to say it was 10:18, but it was around the 10-minute mark. That play right there was absolutely huge, and it came from Isaiah Oliver. So I got to give him major props there. And then I would say the second player. Yeah, go ahead. Actually,
no. You're right. You got it. I keep going, man. Keep flowing.
I was just gonna say the second player. I have to say Moody. You know, it's crazy because last week I gave a ton of credit to not only Moody but Wisnowski, but Moody, man. I mean, I will say this: he had the kick that went out of bounds. I don't know what the hell happened there, but overall, man, that 57-yard field goal was absolutely clutch and really. For a guy who in the preseason looked about as shaky as he could, as a rookie, by the way, then got injured and was thrown right out there week one, hasn't been even close to missing anything. He has been absolutely money the whole time through. Have to continue to give him credit right now when he's kicking this well.
Oh, look. You know, Jake Moody, I always said people always say, are you gonna go back on drafting a kicker in the third round if Moody makes field goals? I'm like, no, because nobody drafts a kicker in the third round, and they can make, so like, and there are other kickers in the league making field goals that weren't drafted in the third round. That was the whole argument. Jake Moody, though, was clutch as hell. That 57-yard field goal was absolutely, like I just said, like to me, that was the pivotal moment of the game for the 49ers. He misses that. That's where I'm like, oh. Now we get the Rams with the ball basically at the 50-yard line, and it's 17-17 in the second half. That was huge because I think the Rams were like, all right, another missed throw, and nailing that just like takes the winds out of your sails. And the Niners were able to respond well after that. And I think they got some. I don't believe in momentum all the time, but I really think that like actually kind of lifted the Niners a little bit and said, hey, all right, we got a lead. We were staring down the barrel, being tied still. Let's go. Let's get this. And yeah, Jake Moody, aside from he kicked that kickoff out of bounds and put him up to 40 that ended up being a touchdown. He's been solid. And that, I mean, I'm sorry, 57 yards, man. That ain't no gimme. That was awesome. And it was straight through.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And shades by Chardell, good point. That Oliver tackle was on Kyren Williams. So when you're a corner one-on-one with a running back, and all the running back needs is just a couple yards. And Kyren Williams ran extremely hard. There was a play early in that game near the goal line where he ran through Fred Warner. It was one-on-one with Fred Warner, and he was able to move forward a couple yards. So now he's one-on-one with Oliver and couldn't. That was a huge play.
And Oliver missed. There was a play earlier. I want to say it was in the second quarter where Kyren Williams got thrown a ball in the flat. It was a little off because there might have been a little bit of pressure. He fell on the ground untouched. Isaiah Oliver had a chance to basically get him out. He was getting off the ground and just completely felt like he had Crisco on his hands. And like, that was a huge missed tackle. And so for him to come back and be one-on-one with him on that play that forced fourth down where the Rams, in hindsight, I think that was on 3rd and 2, correct? And so I think after that play, Sean McVay went to the line of scrimmage and took a delay of game. Instead of going for it, Kyle Shanahan early with 1 second left to go in the second quarter, in the first half. If they don't get it, it's 17-10 Rams, goes for it. I thought that Rams should have gone for it there. I know people like cringe because they think of Brandon Staley, and I just think that was a crucial misstep by Sean McVay, and I think that makes the Isaiah Oliver play that much more magnified.
Yeah, most definitely. No doubt about it. Huge play by Oliver. So those are my guys that I'll give credit to. Cryptic says, my worry still lingers from last season about the defense when they face elite QBs. However, when they needed to play, they made them. Yeah, make no mistake about it. Stafford is still elite. And when I'm curious to see how that second matchup goes if Cooper Kupp is healthy, because you give him Cooper Kupp. Matthew Stafford, just overall, let's look at the things he's done. Mm-hmm. He had Megatron, one of the best receivers of all time. I understand that, but gave him a historic season. Then he comes to the Rams and tops it essentially with Cooper Kupp. Then he gets Puka Nacua to set the all-time rookie record in the first 2 games with receptions. I mean, this guy makes receivers look about as good as you can. He is absolutely elite. And when Cooper Kupp comes back, the Rams continue to ascend, get better throughout the year because they should. They're a young team. I'm curious to see how that second matchup goes. I really am. But you're right. They struggle a little bit sometimes with elite QBs. The bottom line is they found a way to get a win, but it is something to look at because not always is the team around those elite QBs maybe not quite as bad as the Rams. So
no, and I think that's legit. And I'm not saying the Niners always play poorly against the elite. I mean, the question that
they've turned some elite quarterbacks into very mediocre quarterbacks at times where we've left the game saying, oh, that quarterback's overrated. And it's like, well, maybe the 49ers defense is just really good. That's a possibility.
Yeah. I mean, even look at a guy like Geno Smith last year, who a lot of people were ready to crown as saying like, this he's reborn, he's and the Niners made him look like, a D3 quarterback last year. So I think that Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. And I know last year's game, you still had Bosa and Charvarius Ward coming back from injuries and things like that were not trying to make excuses, but I will just say this. I think that Stafford is healthy. And when Stafford is healthy and when he's protected and the Niners, look, if you don't get pressure, and I'm not saying you can't blitz. Blitzing is not pressure. Okay. Like that's leaving the field open. If you can't get pressure with 4 against Matt Stafford, he will F you. And he did today in the beginning of the game. He picked apart that defense methodically. And they didn't have a lot of yards per play, but they were methodical. They had in the first half, I tweeted this out, the 49ers gave up 15 first downs to the Steelers the entire game. They had given up 15 first downs for the Rams with like 3 minutes to go in the second quarter. Okay. It doesn't have to be a lot of yards per play. If you can just convert and you can get up 6 yards of play here and there, like that's all you need. And we know that Kyle Shanahan can do that. We know that Sean McVay can do that. So yeah, I will say this, if Stafford is healthy, what I saw today against a defense that we know to be a very good NFL defense in the 49ers, of course. The Rams are going to hang around. And the Rams they're going to have to have massive injuries for them to have any chance of tanking at this point. I think maybe that might have been more misguided on my part. Like they're going to be competitive.
Yeah, we'll talk about them a little bit more here. But Flav says, I felt like this. Oh, actually, here. Sorry, there's one more. I'll get to you in a second, Flav. Mike says, don't think Wilkes' plan for Tuca being such a factor. So I don't know if he means Tutu and Puka or if he meant Puka and said Tuca. But either way,
Tuco from Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. I think.
Yeah, perfect. But either way, I mean, I don't know what else you would have planned for. I mean, Puka, if you just mean Puka or Tutu, both of them, either way, they were the whole offense last week in the receiving game. So no matter what, he should have been prepared for that, especially because both of those players can work out of the slot, and the nickel corner spot might be a little iffy at times. But I think if that's the case, then maybe he should have thought a little bit harder about what could have happened in that game. Flav says, I felt like this was Brock's most off game. but shows the benefit of having someone like Brock at quarterback. His floor is still high enough to win a lot of games. If he continues, then there's a concern, though. Yeah, nobody's hitting the panic button on what we saw from Brock today. I would agree, probably one of his more off games, but it was still enough to get the job done. And I'm fine with that. Like, as long as they keep winning, it really doesn't matter that much. But, you just have to call it like you see it. And it wasn't Brock's best game. And like I said, if people are going to get upset at you saying that, then maybe this isn't the chat room for you, or maybe no post-game chat room is for you. You should probably just stay away until Wednesday or Thursday when we start talking about the new team. I don't know. Pava Nate says, not a great running back group. Is Kyle overusing CMC? Let's talk about that for a second, because really, I'm trying to think. Did any running back, did any running back get a carry other than CMC?
I am looking that up. When I saw the comment, for some reason, I'm looking that up right now, and I don't know why my ESPN app is kind of going on the fritz, but I don't recall, actually. No, I also don't think off the top of my head that CMC had that many carries.
Yeah, I don't feel like it, but
I think what we got to see, I think Pava, you said that got a great running back room, not necessarily not a great running back room. I will say this: I totally get, like our guy Ryan last week. I was talking to him about, are we over, in a big game with a big lead?
God changes things. God definitely changes things. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, but like the idea though that like CMC, like this game was close, like virtually the entire game. This game is a one possession game. Okay, and so. This is CMCs are, I was going to say it. Offensively, CMC is the best. And I will say this. I love Trent Williams. CMC is the most valuable player on this team. Okay. I'm just going to say this. I wouldn't have said it last year until he got here. You take CMC away from this team. The security blanket, the extra stuff. In fact, Kyle could have used him more creatively today than he did. I'm not even quibbling about that. I just feel like it's okay for him to get a standard amount of touches. I don't need to see Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason. If we're talking about like nursing a 21-point lead, sure, rotate a series if we got to do that. But in a game like this, yeah, I want him out there. I mean, I especially with BA with kind of getting hurt, and Debo even for a time was out. Look, CMC's healthy. I get it. It's a long season, but I think today, Jesse, if you've seen anything different, I'm trying to drag my app up here, but like, I'd be shocked if he had. Do you have any more than like 13 carries? I mean, like, was that
20 carries, and I think 3 receptions? But that's not a lot. Either way, like. It is a very good running back room. I think there are times where you could say Kyle is overusing CMC. I didn't get that impression today. And so my biggest thing is, now I always reserve the right to go back and watch film on certain plays. Like maybe I got this play wrong, or maybe I thought this player played better or worse than I initially thought. And so the film showed different. But when it comes to things like this is more a feeling. Like, do you feel that this player was overused in CMC? And for me, that's either something you felt while the game was happening or you didn't. And I'm not going to go back and make something out of nothing when after the fact, during the game, I didn't think he was overused. So I'm not going to say it now and turn it into this thing, because I don't feel like that's the case. Not this game anyways.
20 carries for CMC is not 25 touches for CMC a game is standard. Like honestly, like that's going to be normal usage for CMC. People got to understand. Yeah. And if it's a close game, are we really saying that? Like, I mean, I'm not saying you or anybody saying this.
No, I think to his point, and what I will say is it was a little surprising that throughout the game, even early on, like zero carries from the running back is any other running back is interesting. Now Debo did have 5. I
love that. So, I love that from Debo. It's the thing. I say this all the time. I don't even know, Jesse, you agree with me on this or not, but I will say this. I thought Debo, I want to see more for that. That Debo is a wide back. I want to see Debo in those situations. I love some of the play calls they drew up today to get him the ball in space. That is exactly where he thrives. And look, And Pava, I think you got a good point because I was an Elijah Mitchell stan when he was a rookie in training camp. I thought he looked like the best player in camp. I said that.
Whoa, you got a bug on there or something.
It was a fly. It was a
funny.
fly. That's
I was
crazy.
like, well, what is that? That's like the biggest bee I've ever seen in my life. That's terrifying.
Did my MacBook Pro just go black? But like, yeah, so like I would say I just lost my train of thought. What the hell were we even talking about? This fly.
We were talking about carries and CMC.
Like the fly on Mike Pence's forehead. Yeah. So CMC, Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell. I think this actually says more about how Kyle thinks about that running back room. I don't think that he feels like he can count on Elijah Mitchell in pass protection. I don't think that Jordan Mason he can count on to be a back that is going to be a decoy in things where he really needs it. If he can put Jordan Mason to eat up time, like to kill when you've got a big lead, but I don't think he really sees that. TDP is a healthy scratch. Like, I don't know if this running back room is that great. And I'm not dogging you on that because I do like Elijah Mitchell a lot. I'm just saying from Kyle's perspective, I think CMC's usage the last 2 games gives you a pretty good window into his mind about what he sees. And that's why I said, if CMC goes out, there could be some massive struggles on this offense.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, we don't have to.
We're not going to talk that into existence, though.
J. Mike says Wilkes looked like he was calling plays, still trying to respect the run, even if they weren't running. Well, that was one thing that they did do last week is they ran the heck out of the ball. They stayed committed, and I think sometimes you don't have to establish the run in the particular game you're in. If the perception is you run the ball, that's kind of a built-in equity that you've got. And so maybe that was the case. I also think last week, Wilkes, to me, everything just went perfect. And this is the first time that Wilkes is coaching this 49ers defense and not everything went perfect. Sometimes you just get caught in the middle of game plans. Also, sometimes you do put the players in good position and they just don't make plays. So, I think it can go either way. I think long-term Wilkes is going to be fine. I think the defense for the most part is going to be fine, but it was definitely an off game for sure. All the way around, really. It was for a lot of players. I'll say that.
I thought that was an Iowa State logo I saw. It was just Louisville. Never mind.
It is. But yeah. Mike Monahan, what's up, Mike? He says Brock was 17 and 25 with a rushing TD and a passing TD. BA should have caught one of the drops. You're probably talking about the out pattern. That was just short of the first down mark, I think.
What? When
he was hurt. And if BA wasn't hurting, he might have been faster and caught up to what looked like it was overthrown. I can't go there. We got to be willing to say that he just was off, man. He was off. It is what it is.
Cornerback by 6 yards.
Yeah.
You're saying the cornerback was slow too? I mean, Mike, no, all due respect, like BA dropped he caught it, and actually by NFL rules probably should have been called a catch because you surviving the ground is no longer a rule. It was a contested play by the DB, and the ball hits, and it's like, what did BA was doing his usual stuff today, like getting 6 yards of separation down the field in the NFL isn't easy. He can't. How do you catch up with the ball? Like the ball. I mean,
if he was laboring that bad to where he couldn't catch up with a ball that was like perceived to be underthrown, then how did he get so open? You know what I mean? He obviously wasn't laboring bad enough to get wide, buck naked open. So again, it's not
change speed in the air.
Right. It wasn't his best game. It didn't matter. They still won. He played fine. It was not awful by any means, but he had some misses, and it's okay to say it. He just had some misses. It's not the end of the world. It'll be fine. Flav says, can we all just take a second and be grateful that we didn't sign Russell Wilson to the contract the Broncos did? Thank you, Lord. Good point, Flav.
But Flav, I'm glad Flav brought this up because I just saw Ari Meirov tweet this. It was 35-27 Commanders, 1 second left. Russell Wilson throws a Hail Mary, gets tipped by 3 players, caught by the Broncos. So then it's 35-33, and then the Broncos miss a 2-point conversion. Russell Wilson loses. He's a pumpkin. And it is another loss for the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton just couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yeah, right. Keith Murphy, the unbeaten, says, I like that Brock and the offense can still can seem somewhat out of sync and still get 30. No, that's a very, very good point.
I agree.
That drive right before half really kind of puts it into perspective, because Brock literally just hits 2 screen passes and CMC and Debo kill it, absolutely get him downfield. Then you have the pass interference because, decently thrown ball, Debo's respected, and then you're able to score. Like, that drive was so clutch, because if they don't score there, especially going forward on 4th down, and I got to be honest, when they went for it, before I saw the result, you got to have your reactions before you see the result. I was telling David, I don't know if I like this. I like to keep it because the Rams get the ball to start the second half. And if they get a field goal, I would like to keep it to 1 score. If you don't get this for whatever reason, you're down 7 and they get the ball. If they score, you could be down 2 scores. I don't necessarily like that. Now, kudos to Brock Purdy, the offensive line, Kyle Shanahan for executing, but I'm just being real. In that moment, I didn't necessarily feel good about going for it in that situation, but it worked out.
I will say this. When I saw that play, you're talking about the touchdown.
Yeah, right before half.
I had tweeted before this. If you were to have asked me before that, I didn't even have enough time to think. When I saw them bringing out there, I was like, all right, let's do this. I'm not a shill for everything Kyle does. I also am a guy that respects the hell out of Kyle. I will say this. I love that. And I just tweeted out.
I know you did. You said in the moment.
Yeah, you loved it. I did. I said 20 minutes before that, I had said kicking field goals inside the 10. So I think Flav had referenced this time where the pass to BA that was a drop. I guess you could clarify that as, but that's still kicking a field goal inside the 10. I said you can't kick field goals inside the 10.
Yeah,
you can't do that routinely. The Niners did that so much under the Jimmy Garoppolo tenure, right?
Yeah,
that's what loses you games. So I think Kyle was like, "Fuck it."
No, you're fine. You're good.
Okay.
You're good. You're fine.
I don't know, man. I don't want you to get demonetized. I was like, Kyle said that he's seen this, and I think it might have been like Kyle learning and saying, "Look, we've got some hogs up here. We've got a guy. We've got some push. This is a half a yard. 17-13 ain't gonna cut it."
Yeah,
The Rams get the ball in the third quarter, right after the half. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. I think that 99% of coaches, I say 99, I would say 3/4 of coaches would not have done that.
Yeah.
And I think that you saw the look on Kyle's face. I don't think anybody doubted that was going to happen. The big concern was you couldn't do that with 11 seconds because you couldn't get back to the line of scrimmage. Well, with 1 second, who cares? That's a completely different. I would not have been a fan of running the ball with 11 seconds.
No, because then the time would have ran out.
Then the field goal's not on the table either. So that play to me, I actually thought was exactly what he should have done. The actuaries that run it would say, yes, the math says you should do this. And you have the personnel to get it done. So I thought that was on. That, to be quite honest, may have been the play of the game as well. I mean, if you go back, that's
the whole drive was really just super, super crucial. Flav says, "Laugh out loud, God heard me," and he blessed Russ.
You saw that, Flav. I said that but then they didn't get the 2-point conversion. So then God smited them. Okay.
Smoke. He's literally going through the emotions live of what happened with Russell Wilson. I love it.
Smited or smoked?
I don't
I'm a teacher. I should know this, but somebody Google it.
All right, let's end on this here. Let's talk about the NFC West thoughts, because going into this game, to me, on paper, again, this is why games are not played on paper. Geno Smith is all of a sudden decent again. Josh Allen's all of a sudden decent again. Weird how that works, but going into this week, Seattle without both their tackles, going against Detroit, that looked like a very losable game, if I'm being nice. And I thought, okay, there's a big opportunity that Arizona's 0-2, Seattle is 0-2. The Rams losing to the Niners would be 1-1, but you essentially have a 2-game lead on the whole division. Now, it didn't quite play out that way. Seattle was able to get a gritty win in overtime against the Lions, keeping the division close. But just overall, any surprises in the NFC West? How do you kind of see this thing playing out as the season progresses now that we've got some games on paper? What do you think of the NFC West as a whole?
No knee-jerk reactions, but here's some nuance to all of this. I think that the Seahawks, I always said, were going to be competitive. I don't think that completely changes. However, what they did against Detroit without Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas says, actually, talk about the NFC West, to me, says a little bit more about the Lions than people are comfortable talking about. Yeah. I think the Lions went into KC and got gifted a whole host of stuff. I think the Lions are a good, fun team. I don't think that I learned a ton about Seattle necessarily. I think that both of those teams are going to be relatively competitive, middling teams. I think the Arizona Cardinals are not. I'm not worried about them. I think they're out there playing football. I think the Giants are pretty bad. I think Brian Daboll got a lot of flowers last year. Kyle Shanahan should have won Coach of the Year, but Brian Daboll did it because they won games, and they're a team that's not scaring anybody. And then I look at the Rams. I actually feel like I learned more about the Rams today. And I said, I alluded to this before. I think that the Rams, and by the way, Puka Nacua, I will eat crow. I'm going to go back and quote tweet my own tweet and say Rams fans were almost right. I didn't think that Puka Nacua was a bad player. I think, though, you see guys like this all the time. Day 3 players who fill a role really well, who are smart, who run crisp routes, who can operate within systems efficiently. He's that guy. And the offensive line played better than I thought. If Notaboom is out, that could change. That being said, this division is the 49ers division. I'm not going to throw shade against the Seahawks. I think they will be competitive. I think there's going to be some tight games ahead. But I think the Niners are going to run this division. And they have to play like it. And that's why they have to capitalize on those things that got to get tightened up. And if they do, this is their division to lose. And it's not. And I don't really believe it's remotely close. I don't think any of these 3 teams are really anywhere near the echelon of who the 49ers are. You know, I'm the furthest thing from a homer, but I honestly believe that.
Yeah, and I agree with that. But what I will say is, I think that, and I'm not saying it happens. I'm definitely not predicting it to happen. But I think coming into the season, most people were at the 5-1 or 6-0 in the division. You could see there's a path now where maybe a couple losses potentially happen. You know, not saying it for sure happens, but I want to say this about the Rams, and I did talk about this on the Behind Enemy Lines show. They remind me a lot of last year's Seahawks, a ton actually, from the standpoint that nobody expected more than maybe 5 or 6 wins. You've got a very good head coach who's a veteran head coach now. You've got Geno Smith, we didn't know could play like an elite quarterback, but he played very well last year. We know Stafford, when healthy, is elite. We didn't know if he was healthy or not. That was really the question from him. But you're getting elite quarterback play for a season potentially. You've got the coach. You've got a bunch of young players. And really most of the league is sleeping on you. Much like the Seahawks last year, the Rams came out in week 1 and got a win that most people did not expect for them to get. They then play the 49ers in week 2, just like the Seahawks. Actually made this game a lot closer than Seattle could in week 2 last year. I think that the Rams, and now the NFC is down. I'm not saying it would be the biggest feat in the world if you can sneak in at 10-7 or 9-8 and make the playoffs. But I can see a path to the Rams potentially being a playoff team. I can. I wouldn't have said that at all going into week 1. And same thing with Seattle last year. Thought there was 0 chance Seattle would make the playoffs, and they did. So
I will say this though. I will say this. I am always about honoring what my opponent can do. Yeah. I do believe that this is why I talked about the Brock Purdy misses. Again, to go full circle on this, you know where I stand on Brock Purdy. I think that Brock Purdy is an incredibly confident guy who the team rallies around, who offers more than Jimmy did. I believe that. And I believe he is a guy that will execute. I think, Mark, we're talking about like Jared Goff and Ben Johnson offense versus Brock Purdy, Kyle. Kyle trusts him. Okay. Mm-hmm. I felt like the 49ers had left points on the field on offense. And I feel like if Steve Wilkes could go back again, could remedy some things that happened there. I also think this Nick Bosa holdout, which I actually don't blame Nick Bosa for, is having some domino effects.
That's fair.
And I feel like that if there were a couple more plays that were legitimately should have been made that were not even chance, I don't even know if we're looking at this Rams team completely in the same light. That being said, I completely agree with you that if Matt Stafford is healthy and he has protection, you don't need to have Jerry Rice and Terrell Owens as your receivers. Okay? You don't. And if Cooper Kupp comes back and all of a sudden the Rams decide, you know what? I don't know if we're going to go after Caleb. I don't know if we're bad enough to get him. They're like, well, hell, let's just put the pedal to the metal and do this. The Rams can be a dangerous team. And so I'm really glad. And somebody told me this is a division win. You know, I think it was in a moment of trying to stifle any type of critique. But I said, nope, I hear you. It's a division win. They had their mettle tested. They responded. They're 2-0. They got a short week against a battered Giants team that looked like hell today against Arizona and pulled one off against one of the worst teams in the NFL. Thursday night football can be weird. And I think the Niners are going to come in this with like, okay, let's get our heads straight. We got 10 games to our next game. And I think the next game is Arizona.
Really it comes down to Dallas week 5, man. That's when we're going to know a lot about the 49ers and who they are for sure.
And it's a team that starts slow. And we got a team that I think it would be a shock if they're not 4-0 going into that Cowboys game. Yeah. And so that's a great place to be. It's a great place
I think it'd be a shock if Dallas isn't 4-0. I think
it's going to
be 2 4-0 teams heading into that game. Yep.
Awesome.
I really do. So Jason Lutz says constants in life, death, taxes, and 200 yards plus with a win for Brock Purdy.
200. How many plus beyond the 200? I didn't check.
I don't remember the total, but right now that does seem to be the case. Sal Jeezy says, any word on Luter Jr.? I can't stand to watch Ambry Thomas get cooked on a weekly basis. Teams will know to attack him and not Ward. It's funny because during the game, I did say something along the lines of, this is exactly what we saw from Ambry Thomas during training camp. Basically, anytime he was lined up, the 49ers went at him. You saw that for a while with the Rams as well today. Definitely not ideal. Now, Luter Jr., I think initially was somebody that they were going to try to redshirt if they could, but with the Womack injury, maybe some of the deficiencies with the potential starters, you might see Luter come out after his pup stint, and if he's healthy, start to get on the field a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised by that.
Ambry Thomas, I have to say at the beginning of the game, like we were texting about it, I've been a guy that actually wanted him to succeed. I thought he carried himself well in certain things. Boy, oh boy, if you have him as your CB2 outside. So Jesse was talking about trade deadline cornerbacks. The thing is, it's harder to find those guys, I feel like, that are always available. Oh boy, I cringe to think like Ambry's got the athletic traits, but that's a big thing. That's a big worry for me.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Ambry Thomas was a guy that I actually stood up for a lot his rookie year.
Me too,
because he was getting, quote unquote cooked, or basically every game there was a play that looked awful. But when you watched him snap in and snap out, he actually played pretty damn good. And so I stood up for that. But he seemed to regress in year 2. He's never fully bounced back. Also, I think he's more of a man corner and doesn't get to play a ton of man. And so I just press man corner specifically. And so I don't know. I don't know that I see it in Ambry, and it's unfortunate. That is absolutely for sure. Mm-hmm. But as far as Luter, I got to expect to see him at some point unless he's just not healthy. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Beast Mode Gaming says BCB sticks it. Excuse me. Pause. Sticks it in and wins. Win the game and wins. And then he got sniped by the $2 because you only have 50 characters. He wanted to say hashtag undefeated, but he couldn't fit in the last 2 letters. So I'll say it for you. I feel it. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, by the way, Brock Purdy was not credited with a touchdown pass. They actually went back and changed it. It was when he threw that, it was a backwards pass to Deebo Samuel. Deebo was given a touchdown run on that. So just to let you know, the final box score for Brock was 17 for 25 for 206. No touchdowns, no interceptions.
I needed that touchdown in my fantasy league.
Golly, I would have liked it as well. But
that sucks.
Thankful, but you know what? That's the thing. I had Deebo with him in my Superflex league, and it would have been nice to have the touchdown, the extra 4 points. So thanks a lot, NFL Stats.
Screwing us over. Yeah, he's my second quarterback in a Superflex league. So, dang it.
I had him and Anthony Richardson today, and Richardson was on pace for one of those classic 50-point games and then got a concussion.
My team name is Zero Dark Purdy. So that was about as clever as I can get with it.
Mine is pretty good. The Larry David look. Yeah.
Cryptic says no Bears, Falcons type losses, and get to the promised land. Okay, so he's referring back to the Bears, Falcons. How about Denver last year? Can we throw that in there? We need to compete during those primetime matchups and finish these Lamb type of games. Completely agree with you. Yeah, these are the type of games that you have to win.
Yep.
Not always has that been the case in the past. We'll see how the season kind of goes through the ebbs and flows. But again, in a day that I don't think anybody played their best football, they still found a way to win after a ton of travel in week 2. And we got to love that for sure.
And to Cryptic's point, that's exactly like last year. The difference between those games was hosting the NFC Championship game. And I'm not saying that but you know, it's still regardless of the like, it's still. And so, yeah, winning the games you're supposed to win matters.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it was something that I talked about last week. You know, the 49ers really all offseason talked about how important that number 1 seed was. And then towards the tail end of the offseason, you started to hear Deebo and Kyle Shanahan also talk about it. So it's certainly something they recognize.
Right.
Every game counts the same. It doesn't matter if it's week 1 or week 18. They all count the same in the win column or the loss column. So getting games like this are huge. Going out week 1 and beating a Pittsburgh Steelers team who may not be a playoff team by any means. I got that. Right. But overall, I mean, that's every win we're going to take. Well, it doesn't matter where it happens.
And I think that's the case where I would say, like, I used to coach baseball, and I would never put a game on any of my kids. They're kids, right? When they're kids, you bring them aside. Yeah. And if I had a close baseball game and my third baseman sailed a routine ground ball over the first baseman's head twice and led to extra bases and then 1 by 1, I'd be like, I would totally love up that kid. And we talk about, like I said, yeah, there's things that happen, but like the misses matter. Like the things that you're supposed to do matter. The fundamentals matter, right? So when you critique a fundamental in an NFL game, it's not hating a player. It's not piling on a player. It's not a gotcha moment. It's not anything like that. It's like saying, hey, we're a good team. We expect to win. We're supposed to go for the Super Bowl. So we got to convert on these things that matter. And I think the Niners are going to tighten it up. But we'll just, we'll see what happens.
Well, and I don't know if this is true or not. I got to imagine it is, but Zero Shift says Thomas is hurt now. So I don't know what
Ambry Thomas.
Yeah, Ambry. I know. That's what I'm saying, though. Like what? I don't know the extent of the injury, so I don't want to comment on it now, but that's not good for a secondary that's already,
That's Deebo moving outside completely, and where he probably should have been, even though he came into the league like with nickel chops. Like, I think that it's going to be Isaiah Oliver's actually importance to the team is magnified.
Yeah, I completely agree. CB9er says, any worry about the bad deep balls from Brock? We talked about it early in the show. Nobody's hitting the panic button by any means, but it's something that we have to monitor, right? Like, really, for me, the one that surprised me was the slant to Deebo. That's the one that I was like, okay, he always hits that. And at first, when you saw the play, I was like, oh, it's pressure. He got hit as he was throwing. Reality was he was hit. He was buried, actually. Took a shot, no doubt about it. But it wasn't the hit that caused the errant throw. So to me, I think Brock Purdy, we kind of know like what some of his limitations may be. And I think that showed today. But I don't think that it's anything to panic over because we've also seen him take those shots and hit them. If it continues to be an issue throughout the season, then we're definitely going to go back to this point and be like, well, that was the starting point. We saw it in the Rams game. We should have known. However, if he starts hitting those throws later, throughout the season or whatever, then really it's not going to mean anything. So I'm just not willing to hit the panic button at all based off of today's game.
I will say this, though. That play that you talked about, the Debo crosser, where I think Sanchez had talked about his foot being the wrong, whatever.
Yeah.
There were other plays that were receptions. There were 3 of them today where the ball placement was not really, really bad. And the receivers, Kittle, Debo twice, George Kittle once, make really circus contortions of their body to catch what should be routine balls. Those shouldn't have been catches in normal situations, because if not for those things matter. And so there were at least 4 balls, just in those where I'm like, whoa, that ball placement that's not an accurate ball at all. And then that doesn't even take in consideration the Debo, BA, Juwan Jennings deep balls. So I'm looking at 7 balls today where, you could say, well, that's only 7 out of, yeah. I want to see that tightened up. I love that Purdy can come back and be resilient and confident and not get flustered, but the gimmies got to be gimmies. And I think that's what I want to see it hopefully get tightened up.
Yeah. And what I'll say is those are the types of misses that definitely could be the difference in winning and losing if you're playing a good team, a good defense, especially like Dallas. If you miss those plays, you're not going to get a lot of them against Dallas. Now, you had quite a bit today. Unfortunately, you didn't land on any of them. Not a big deal. They won the game. But maybe you only get one of those against Dallas. And maybe missing it is the difference in the game. And so that's what I would say is ultimately going forward against these good opponents, you may only get one shot to make that play where BA breaks loose downfield or Debo or whoever. You've got to make that throw. So not concerned by any means. It's only week 2. They won the game. Something to monitor is all I'll say.
And Brock Purdy came up in the post game, has already talked about saying, I need to improve. This is what's funny.
For sure.
He just said, he legitimately 100% said all that stuff was on me.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say, if any people like Jesse or anybody else says, hey, that's on Brock, that's not saying Brock sucks. That's not saying I can't stand Brock as my that's saying exactly what Brock is saying.
Yeah, I mean, early on in the stream, people were frustrated at the mere mention of his name. So it's like,
he's the quarterback for our team now. He's not Mr. Irrelevant. He's not a rookie. It doesn't matter where he was drafted. He's the quarterback for our 49ers. And I think he's going to respond well. I do. I actually really do.
I do too. Yeah. I do too. So, and like I said, really for me, not going to hit the panic button. Definitely something to monitor. And we'll see, week 5, when those throws become available, if they become available, we just got to hit them then. That's a game where everything is going to matter. Every inch will matter. Those throws will certainly matter then. They didn't matter today. They still got the win. Even in his quote unquote worst moment, maybe of his career, worst game, I guess, on paper, it still was pretty good. And they were able to get the win. I'll put it like this. The 49ers have a quarterback on their bench, and Sam Darnold, who I've been very critical of this offseason. We've seen what it looks like when he plays bad football.
Right.
When he plays bad football, it's 46% completion percentage, 53 yards passing, 0 touchdowns, and multiple turnovers. When Brock Purdy plays, quote unquote, not his best football or bad football, at least this early in his career, it's still efficient and was enough to get the job done. So I'll take it. If a C game is the worst we're ever going to see from Brock, then the 49ers are in really, really good shape, because there are quarterbacks around the league, even great ones, that will have the F game from time to time. You saw one from Josh Allen last week. And this isn't to say, listen, Brock at some point in his career will have an F game. But I would say if 8 out of the 10 bad games he has throughout his career, every 8 out of 10 that he has, if they're C games, you're fine. You can live with that. You can live with that.
And what I love what you just said is that you created a new hashtag, every inch matters. I've been married for 14 years. And the only reason I'm still married I mean, I'm a slob, man. I don't bring anything to the table, but because every inch matters, I'm still I'm a happily married man, and I just want to I just want to commend you for that, Jesse. And like for some of us people that just don't have much going for us, thank you. At least
to you, I salute. I don't know if there's a better way to end the show. I will be back Tuesday with Ryan, and then Tuesday night with Sunil. David, thank you so much for that ending. That was perfect. We'll see you then. Peace.